Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Out to the state of Georgia, our great friend, Congressman Bob Barr, joining us once again. Congressman, great to have you back.
Good morning. Always great to be with you all.
Well, first of all, we know that you love Idaho. You've talked about Idaho quite a bit the last time you were on, but you ever just miss the old days of that great show that you were on and co-hosted a few times, Crossfire, the original Crossfire?
I do miss it. I had a lot of fun on that show back when CNN ran that. They ran it for a number of years, and I always enjoyed being on it because it was a civil discourse, and you got some real substance out of it.
It's a very different world today. I guess that thought would be antiquated, but I mean, has it just turned into a giant shouting match?
It is, whether it's in the Congress or simply at political events or on many of the cable news shows. It is. It's just who can shout the loudest and who can talk over each other. Back, for example, when I was first up in the House, or after a few years during the impeachment back in the 98, 99 period, even back then, when Fox News was first getting started, you could have a civil discourse, whether it was on O'Reilly or Hannity, and actually have time as the guest to talk. But nowadays, on many of these shows, not all of them, but many of them, the guest is simply there to provide an opportunity for the host of the show to say what he or she wants to say.
And Congressman, how does that hurt our critical thinking and our ability to understand the issues?
That's a very good question. I was just out this past weekend in Las Vegas, Nevada, for a annual conference called Freedom Fest. And I was asked to speak to a group of folks out there on impeachment. And it harms the lack of civil discourse in the media and elsewhere, harms the ability of our representative democracy to work, because it was predicated, or one of the predicates for our functioning representative democracy, as our founders set it up, was to have an educated citizenry. And you can't have an educated citizenry if you don't have a media that presents actual facts, or even in the Congress and other places, if you don't have substantive discourse that simply perpetuates ignorance, rather than to develop the information that people need in order to determine public policy properly.
It is troubling, the lack of critical thinking that goes on, the one-sided media, and then because it's on social media, it must be true.
I'm sorry, that was a little bit garbled there. I apologize. Had a bad connection.
No worries, Congressman Barr. You can ask for a restatement anytime here on KIDO Talk Radio. Going back and forth on the critical thinking, though, you have the one-sided media that doesn't present the other side of the story, that, if you're a Republican, you're bad, you're a racist. Then you have folks on social media posting things, and no one's saying, well, just because it's on Facebook doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% true.
It's sort of a conundrum, to use one of those fancy words that lawyers like to use, but the freer the flow of information is, the readier the access to information is through social media and the Internet, there still seems to be less and less real substantive knowledge. And one of the reasons is because it is so easy to just shoot out information on the Internet, on the web, without verifying it, and for people to receive it without critically thinking about it or verifying it, because there's so much information so quickly, but there's very, very little knowledge and therefore less critical thinking.
Congressman Barr, before we talk about what will be the Mueller testimony, you support law enforcement. You have an agency that continues to support law enforcement. Could you tell us a little bit about the need to support law enforcement now more than ever?
The need to support law enforcement has always been important in our country, and that is not to say that law enforcement is perfect. I've been very critical where we see law enforcement executing search warrants improperly, for example. But by and large, the vast majority of law enforcement men and women in this country are civil servants who are there to do the right thing, to protect people, to investigate crimes and criminal activity. And if you have a public that sees on the media, for example, as we saw coming out, this really started into high gear in Ferguson, Missouri, 4 or 5 years ago, where you have a media and many people in government who believe and perpetuate this notion are racist, deeply racist, and that most police cannot be trusted, then what you have is you have police backing away from protecting people because they fear they're going to be harmed or criticized. I just wrote a piece, for example, I think it appears today in the Daily Caller, about the settlement agreement that the U.S. Department of Justice entered into several years ago with the Portland, Oregon police. And it makes it, in my view, almost impossible for the Portland police to operate properly because they have all of these bureaucratic documents they have to pay attention to. Every police officer in their department, and they have the Department of Justice and various citizen groups looking over their shoulder, and it causes police to be basically intimidated by the bureaucracy, by the threat of lawsuits, by being harmed and shot by the public, as we saw a few years ago in Houston, Texas. It's very, very toxic.
Congressman Bob Barr joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. If people want to support your group, support law enforcement, how do they get in touch with you?
They can go certainly to the Law Enforcement Education Foundation, which is the group that I had, Law EEF, Law Enforcement Education Foundation. They can certainly go to my website, bobbarr.org, as well, and that will have a link to the Law Enforcement Education Foundation.
Congressman, how rough, and you're much more diplomatic than most of us, how challenging was it for law enforcement, whether in Idaho or Indiana or in your state in Georgia, during the Obama years?
It was made significantly more difficult because in addition to dealing with local groups and local governments that are, by and large supportive, but not always, what you had was a Department of Justice under Attorney General Eric Holder and then Attorney General Loretta Lynch that seemed to go out of their way to attack police departments and to start suing police departments, as the department's Civil Rights Division can do under a 1994 law that was passed by the Congress. They can go out and sue police departments if they believe that there is a pattern or practice of racial profiling or racial prejudice. Very, very broadly defined, and then they can force the department to enter into very lengthy settlement agreements, again, as happened not too long ago in Portland, Oregon, and that is still in effect, which causes police to not be proactive, to be far less proactive than they otherwise would be in protecting the citizenry and protecting property. And I think that's one of the reasons why we saw the police in Portland about a month or so ago back away from these Antifa thugs that were roaming the city and who attacked a conservative reporter and harmed him greatly.
Congressman, always appreciate you. So let's get to the skinny of this. And you're going, finally, are we going to talk about Bob Mueller? I don't know what this guy in Idaho is talking about, but a prediction of what we can expect this week with the Mueller testimony.
It's very odd for a prosecutor to do what Mueller is doing, and he's really boxed himself in. If he goes before the two committees of the House tomorrow and says nothing, which would be consistent with what he has said publicly, that he's not going to comment beyond the report that he issued several months ago, which I have serious disagreements with anyway, then the whole point of the hearing is moot, other than to make it very clear that all the Democrats wanted was to get him up there so that they could make political hay about it. If he goes before the House committees tomorrow and says anything beyond what he included in his report, then he is shown to be to contradict himself and loses credibility. So either way, I think the Democrats have lost credibility, but they don't care. All the Democrats are interested in is not the substance, it's not the law, it's not the Constitution. It is purely to keep going after Trump, to keep the anti-Trump movement alive in the House, and hopefully at some point to move forward with impeachment once again. They tried it last week it was, if I'm not mistaken. Al Green introduces a resolution, articles of impeachment, and the House leadership allowed it to go forward, which was stupid. I don't know any other way to put it.
Congressman, we'll get you out on this one. A video circulating right now on social media. New York City Police Department officers being doused with water, and separate incidents surfaced yesterday, including one which showing officers being drenched in water as they were trying to make an arrest. Your reaction?
It feeds into this narrative the left is pushing, including these far left Congress people up in Washington, that the police are the enemy. And this will come back to bite these communities that rely on police, such as in Chicago and New York, because police will be not forced to, but understandably will stay out of certain areas and back away, even though they need to be in there. But if people are dousing police with water, shouting at them, in some cases shooting at them, then the people that really will suffer will be the citizenry in those areas.
Congressman, once again, if people would love to get a hold of you or your organization to support law enforcement?
They can go to the Law Enforcement Education Foundation, Law EEF, or certainly go to bobbarr.org and pick up a link to the Law Enforcement Education Foundation that I had.
Once again, sir, thank you for your service. We always appreciate you.
Likewise here. Thank you so much.
There we have it. Bob Barr joining us. Coming up next, there's a postcard that's circulating that's getting a lot of attention that is not complimentary to the State Board of Education or President Trump. Plus, in case you're struggling on this early Tuesday morning to wake up, here's a little dose of sunshine.
We know that he's been thinking this the entire time, but he's been keeping it in here. And this week, it went out here when he started telling American citizens, where are we going to go? We're going to stay right here. That's where we're going to go.
Oh, boy.
We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere.
Your reaction next. Thank you for starting your day on the right side. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Don't forget, coming up next month, it'll be here just around the corner, the last week of August, the Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic. It's free, thanks to our friends at Cap Ed Credit Union and your friends here at KIDO Talk Radio. It's one of the best events of the summer. Me, personally, I like it. It's a great way to kick off the football season, to kick off the school season, especially with the people that bring it to us, Cap Ed Credit Union, and quite frankly, the end of the oppressive days that we are getting right now with the weather. But, you know, it could be a lot worse. Speaking of worse, this is going to be a tough one to really kind of convey to you. And maybe you've seen this on social media. Maybe you've read about it in the paper. And if you haven't, I'm going to do my very best to describe it here. There was a postcard that was sent out over the weekend from folks in northern Idaho. And in it, Idaho legislators received it, and I guess others received it. I'm not even on the governor's mailing list, so that's fine with me. But the postcard was a cartoon depicting the new president of Boise State University, President Marlene Tromp, as a clown, mocking the State Board of Education and decrying diversity and inclusion efforts at Boise State. And basically, Idaho taxpayer ticket price, $420,000. That's her salary, and sacrificial children. I'm looking at it right now, and you've got the State Board of Education dressed up as clowns, President Trump dressed up as a clown, BSU and Idaho Education Clown World. And, now you have the usual suspects that are outraged by this. Senator Marianne Jordan of Boise saying, quote, "It's disgusting." Now, the postcard was sent by the InfoWars Army, a group allegedly affiliated with InfoWars that touts itself as peaceful, lawful, and legal, citizen activism operation that is free from treachery of superficial identity-based messaging, faux liberalism, and fake news. So you have Senator Jordan. She's upset, saying we have so many things we could be talking about in a rational way, but this isn't a policy debate. This is just hate, and it's bad for the state. It's bad for these students. It's really embarrassing to welcome the new university president this way. Daniel Brannon, a freelance illustrator, artist from northern Idaho, was listed as the current Kootenai County chairman of the Constitutional Party of Idaho. Brannon posted the image on his social media accounts July 16th with the caption, "A recent commissioned cartoon." There you have it. And you have people reacting to it at 580-5436. 580-KIDO. You have Representative Wintrow of Boise saying this is evil and ugly. Let's see. They've got to go back. I don't know. And like I said, this is a challenging one at 580-5436. 580-KIDO. One thing that we value on this program is to hear what you have to say about it. My opinion, well, I'll give you my opinion in a minute. KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning, traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave. So the postcard claims Trump, at the invitation of the State Board of Education, is bringing Idaho scholarship for illegal aliens, alt gender cult center for LGBTQ creep clowns. I don't think I could repeat that again if you asked me. A gaggle of diversity clowns to gobble up fat paychecks while violating Idaho students. And after listing the members of the State Board of Education, declares the show must not go on. Now, like I said, we don't gin people up here. This show is about uncensored opinion. My opinion on this is, and yes, you have lefties making fun of conservatives, caricatures that are not very flattering, and in America you can do that. Remember, Larry Flint won the lawsuit that you could be offensive. Of course, that only works one way for the lefties. Now you have this conservative group doing it. To me, as I've said to you, dear friend, on national cable news back in the day, and when I was syndicated across the country, that if you are a conservative, you have to be better than this. I don't think that this helps our cause because they're going to lump all of us in with this creative, yet in my opinion, misguided approach. This president just got here. Yes, she comes from liberal California, but you have to give people an opportunity. You don't just sit there and declare someone a lib. Now, again, you're going to say, well, Kevin Miller, you've done that. That's on the airwaves. We're not personally attacking people. Because when you go this far, then all of a sudden, people like myself, like you, we're labeled extremists. We're labeled the bad people. I'm not going to condemn the person that wrote this postcard because in America, look, I have people that threaten me on social media all the time. I have people that threaten my employment all the time because they don't like the message. And that's, as Sean Hannity has taught us, that's something you have to live with. That is the price you pay. That is the life you've chosen. But to dress up the state board as a bunch of clowns and the president as a bunch of clowns, now they're the victims. And who's attacking them? The conservatives. Let's hear what you have to say. We go to Pete in Mountain Home on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pete.
Kevin, several things on the postcard. First of all, I think it's hysterical. That's really, really funny. Secondly, I'd like to remind Ms. Jordan and the other leftist representatives that there is a First Amendment. And finally, I'd like to say it proves once again, if anyone had any doubt, that liberals have no sense of humor at all.
All right. Is it early to be firing this shot already? Is it too early?
No, it's not too early. It's late. They never. The State Board of Education is, I don't know what you'd call them. They're a rubber stamp for leftist groups that just, why they put a person like that in charge of BSU is beyond me. You know, they could have found somebody that, I know it's really, really tough to find anyone conservative and academia, but they might have found somebody who was at least sort of neutral.
Well, let me ask you to respond to Representative Wintrow saying all things they put on that card as somebody that works on civil discourse and so forth. My gut just turns and wrenches when I read that kind of stuff and see it into mailboxes because it's completely hateful and diminishing of real issues that people face in their everyday lives, being marginalized from mainstream culture. Pete, your response.
Oh, poor Will Snowflake. Your feelings were hurt. That's my response.
Pete, appreciate your contribution and listening to KIDO Talk Radio in the morning.
Kevin, and thank you for providing a really, really great, shall we say, venue for those of us who actually do have something of a sense of humor still.
We can't lose our humor, brother. We can't.
Really. Thanks, Kev.
Thank you, Pete. Take care.
You too.
Our great friend, Pete. All right, more on this postcard from Representative Wintrow. Her reaction saying, pronoun scramble on the rainbow stage. Oh, my heavens. How people see themselves and what gender they associate with is a very serious issue of who they are. There is nothing but fear, hate, and diminishing people's humanity. And to Pete's point, you're going to have people saying that this should be banned. Whether you agree with it or not, to me, my opinion, in poor taste. On the other hand, Larry Flynt won the lawsuit where he did horrible things to Reverend Falwell. Look it up on Google. So you have a right to be offensive in America today. You have a right to offend people today. We'll see how that plays in the social media world that we live in. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Out to New York City on KIDO Talk Radio. Fox News Radio's Tanya J. Powers. Talking a little bit about Equifax will pay some big bucks. Good morning.
Good morning.
So here what's the deal with this? Equifax is going to pay some big money?
Yeah, the $700 million settlement with the government over this 2017 data breach. It includes up to $425 million for consumers. And what that means to you, if you were one of these 147 million people who were affected by this, if the affected people may be eligible for up to $20,000 in reimbursements for losses from everything from unauthorized charges to affected accounts, credit monitoring, identity theft protection services you may have gotten, legal fees, other expenses that are listed, by the way, on the Federal Trade Commission's website. If you even spent time dealing with the fallout from this breach, like, sending emails or making phone calls or, doing stuff like that to fix your credit or to look into this, you can actually get up to $25 an hour for up to 20 hours as compensation for the time you spent dealing with this. Again, that's going to have documentation. If you don't have documentation, it doesn't mean you can't get anything. You just may not get as many hours. They also are giving free credit monitoring for the people who are eligible, who were affected by this. They can get up to 10 years of free credit monitoring. If you were a minor that was in this data breach, that free credit monitoring goes up to 18 years. Those are just kind of the high spots from all of this. There's a website that I want to make sure your listeners know to go to. The Federal Trade Commission's website is where they're going to find a lot more information on this. It's ftc.gov. That's ftc.gov. And when you get to the website, there's a gray box in the middle of the front page. It says Equifax. It's big. Click on it. And that's where you start. And that will give you information as to what the settlement entails. There's also a frequently asked questions portion of all of that. And it should, ask you. It should say, "I don't know if I'm affected. How do I find out?" Because a lot of people don't know if they were affected by this. You will be able to use a tool that's on the claims site. Again, this is all at ftc.gov. You'll be able to look at that, use that tool to figure out if you are one of the people affected by this, and then you can go from there.
Yes, we'll be seeing more and more of these type issues, just because these breaches seem to be happening more and more.
They do, and this one was pretty huge. I mean, like I said, it's big just in the breadth of the fact that there were 147 million people involved, but the things that they also got, the compromised data included Social Security numbers, birth dates, addresses, driver's license numbers, credit card numbers, even passport data in some cases. This was actually done from it was a server that was hosting the Equifax. They were using it for their software online. It had a known weak spot, and that's how the hackers got into it. They didn't even notice this was going on for more than 6 weeks. So there was, quite a large hole there where this information was available, and that's kind of how this all happened to start with, that we found out about in 2017.
Boy, you can never be too careful.
Exactly. But like I said, I want to make sure your listeners know how to find out more information if they're entitled to this stuff, especially the free credit reporting. FTC.gov is where you need to start.
Tanya J. Powers, only about a month before football season.
That's right.
We're in the bullpen. Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO, talking about this postcard that was sent to lawmakers depicting the president of Boise State dressed up as a clown. You have you have certain Democratic lawmakers from Boise saying that this is horrible, this is mean. Pete calling in saying, can't people have a sense of humor? To me, well, you already heard what I have to say. There is a First Amendment in America. I don't think this helps the cause, but let's hear what you have to say. Let's go to Ron Paul Jim with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, sir. Hello, Ron Paul Jim. Hank in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Hank.
Good morning. The thing is that Boise State was cited by Attorney General Sessions as having the worst record of any four-year institution in the country for issues of freedom of speech. And the thing is that these Marianne Jordan and these liberal Democrats didn't have any compunctions about this. And it's a one-way street. We can get ourselves intimidated. It seems like, in these two sets of rules, one rule for liberals, one rule for us, we're in a sense being forced to be silent, or otherwise we're going to have our cause undermined. How do we get the public's attention to the awful appointments that have been appointed by Dirk Kempthorne and Governor Butchie Baby that put on the state board? They have put clowns on the State Board of Education. Some of them self-serving, some of them very liberal, some of them, and not only this, but the students in the end get screwed. Who pays for these diversity programs? It doesn't come out directly out of the taxpayers' money. It comes out of the student fees. The students get charged extra fees for these classes. And the students are pawns. These liberals don't care about the students. They care more about enriching themselves. They care about, this research college thing that Custer was pushing. This has been a scam in the sense that basically instructors are pulled out of teaching students and putting into these research projects. And then it's used like the small business startup thing that Boise State has as a means of filtering businesses that will be, for instance, pro-liberal, pro-diversity, pro-Democrat agenda, and eliminating other businesses that might come into Boise who might be otherwise. This has basically been a process that Beater and Custer have been working in tandem on. And why do the students have to pay student fees to basically get a political advisor for Beater? And why is the State Board of Education sitting by and letting this go on? This is what's disgraceful. They are clowns. And I think, and if it gets anybody's attention, we can be silent, we can be politically correct and be silent and let the liberals run right over us. But I'll tell you what, we'll lose Ada County and eventually lose the state if we don't put a check to this thing that's been going on in higher education. But Boise State is by far the biggest abuser of the state institutions across the state, and they affected the politics of Ada County. And the stench is coming out of this university is downright terrible, and nobody's doing anything about it. And our Republicans, and I remember Grant Ibsen, when we pointed out the waste that was going on 10 years ago at PeopleSoft, and the close to $20 million burned, and the student fees being raised to cover those losses. And Grant Ibsen was the representative. He was afraid to attack it because he was afraid of Boise State coming down on him. And I'll tell you what, they didn't help him being silent because they got him anyway. So I think there's no profit for moderate Republicans or any other Republicans to stand by and be silent and let this stuff go on.
So you agree with the postcard? You think that's the right message to send?
I think that they need to get something to get the attention of the people out there of what the issues are out there in Boise State. And if it does get the attention out there, it's better than nothing. We can sit there and worry about whether we offend our liberal friends. They don't care about offending us. There's a double standard here, and the problem is we're slowly being silenced.
There has been a double standard, but you go back to the Republicans that put these jokers in to begin with. Let's go to Ron Paul Jim, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Ron Paul Jim.
Good morning, Kevin. You know what Trump did that makes it so fantastic is that he has stolen the narrative from the liberal left and the media, which has been given, for some reason, the right has allowed them to define us as conservatives or as libertarians or anything like that. And every time he tweets something, it steals the news cycle. They have to react to it. They overreact to it. They define racism. I don't even know what racism is anymore because they've been given the definition of racism to mean just about everything. They're like thought police. Well, what he meant is this, But the point I'm making is that this postcard, in the same way, has stolen the narrative, and now we're talking about this liberal president of the university and focusing on the Department of Education. And like all these positions in government, they hate it when the light shines on them. So they have to try and take the narrative back and say, it's racist, it's racist. Then you see all the people on the right who want to distance themselves and, yeah, me too. Yeah, I don't like that. They're so scared. Oh, we don't want any negative attention. Well, negative attention worked great for Madonna,
Well, you've got Representative Bill Gosling of Moscow saying, wow, that's sick. I don't know. This whole thing has just been real eye-opening with respect to people in their emotional state right now. It's just scary. Why would someone send something like that? I don't know. And he's a Republican.
Well, that's because he's the yellow one on the Republican side. He's got a yellow stripe on him. The guy is a coward. And this is the typical reaction of the GOP, the ones that have been he's probably an establishment type politician, been there forever, has aspirations of climbing the ladder because he's not going to stand for anything, right? He's just going to react, based on which way the news is blowing. So this is, what Trump did is the same thing this postcard is doing. It took the news cycle. We are now talking about the education system in this state. We're now focused on that.
We were talking about it. We were talking about it before, but doesn't this give the opposition the high ground because we're coming off as mean-spirited by having the woman president of Boise State, Trump, dressed up as a clown?
Hey, we are mean-spirited. That's the way I say it.
Right.
Let's control the news cycle. Let's, make them react and make them respond. That's exactly what Trump does, and it's driving them nuts, and it's exposing their true colors. They're communists.
Ron Paul Jim, they're communists. Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. If you look at some of the history of this woman and what she wrote about all the way back in her early college days, she's for castrating men. There's some really sick stuff.
She's for castrating. President Trump is for castrating men. Where did you get that from?
Trump, the president of the
Trump. Yes,
Yeah.
You're,
Can
you cite that up? Cite that, huh?
You can look at her college. What do you call it? Manuscripts stuff. Look at what she wrote about.
Her
She's
thesis.
very, very deep left.
Wow.
Very deep left. And that's the direction. I mean, look at what they're doing. And they had to give her a pay bump over the last guy. That just blows my mind.
Well,
but yeah, the university is a cesspool.
Well, you're all right. Thank you, Ron Paul. Jim, look, the students don't mind paying for it. We had 100 of them come up and say, save our diversity. Of course, when you take a look at, as Hank has said, and Ron Paul, Jim, and Pete from Mountain Home, they agree with this postcard. You have the Democrats that are outraged. People are going to be attacking Republicans. However, there is a First Amendment. And you go back to the Larry Flynt case, the publisher of Hustler magazine, who sued and went all the way up to the Supreme Court. You have a right to be offensive. Now, to me, I think this is a little early to be labeling her as a clown, the State Board of Education as clowns. This wins you no friends. And what it does, unfortunately, and not everybody is Donald Trump. That's what makes him so special. And unfortunately, when we do this, or this group does this, you have good, well-meaning, conservative lawmakers that wrote that letter to President Trump that should have oversight of the budget and to make sure that all campuses, not just Boise State, but they are welcoming to conservatives. This gives them a tougher haul, right? But at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, it's very easy to condemn this postcard. To me, people have a right to do this. They draw things about Sean Hannity or Glenn Beck or Kevin Miller or the late Roger Ailes all the time. But to say this is hateful, dressing up someone as a clown is hateful. And as we've said, the only person in the state that had enough guts to say that the president of Boise State, the president of Idaho, they're overpaid. $400,000 for what? The governor makes what? $120,000, and then he gets the housing allowance, so it's about $180. The mayor of Boise, he rolls in at $140. So you're telling me that being the public relations voice of the University of Boise, maybe that's what they should call it, the University of Boise, is more important than the governor of the state of Idaho, than the senators? I mean, you're thinking about it. President Trump makes more than Senator Risch and Senator Crapo combined. And you could throw in almost a Congressman Fulcher or Congressman Simpson. Yeah, people have a right to criticize. Now, is it hateful? I think that's going a little too far. It's disgusting, according to Senator Jordan. She's entitled to her opinion, saying it's just hate, it's bad for the state. Well, what about the pictures of George W. Bush's Hitler? Was that bad for America, or was that expression? There is a double standard. We'll talk about it next. Kevin Miller on your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. Rolling on the right side. Thank you, Sean Hannity. Don't forget Lars Larson immediately following Sean this afternoon or this evening at 6. Kevin Miller in the morning, traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave.